Welcome to another edition of Women's Wrestling Weekly, the show. I am Kyle Klingman, joined by a man who thinks about women's wrestling in the morning and at night, Scott Beck. Scott, mailbag to start out. This is in response to last show where we talked about the NCAA championships and what it will be next year, potentially 16. We talked about not wanting to decrease that number from 32, which will be the National Collegiate Women's Wrestling Championships this year. Here was the comment: 32 is too many for a bracket. It's so watered down at the end. This is a national championship. Find a way to have allocations like the NAIA. The tournament is big, not deep. Your response, Scott?
Yeah, in looking at the comment, and again, we really appreciate the feedback because we'd like to, be challenged if things we say are wrong or, we don't have a monopoly on ideas. So I love to hear what people think. And that was a very good comment. And yeah, maybe they need to do some of it like the NAI with wild cards. And maybe 32 is too many for now and watered down. So I will stand corrected. I think, though, if we do drop to 16, maybe the right number is 21 or 22. I just don't want to see a scenario where you could have disproportionate strength in conferences because regionally they're closer together and they tend to group them. And you may have a very strong conference where you have the six best people in the country and only four get to go. So I'd like to see a scenario where at least if you have some of those little quirks, you have some flexibility where you can get the best wrestlers in the tournament. But I think that was good feedback and appreciate it.
16 doesn't seem like the right number. The NCAA might disagree. It feels like it should be more in the 20 to 24 range. But when you looked at the bracket of the eight regionals, so the top four go, eight regionals, 32, that's what you're going to have at the national championships. Some of those brackets were small. There were 4 to 5 to 6, and some of those 103, 110, up to 207 had some. So you're looking at a small pool. So a lot of those girls are going to end up going to the national championships that probably aren't the higher level. I don't know what the right number is. It's not going to be on us to determine that, but 32 may not be a little too much at this point.
Yeah, and I would also add in tournaments in general, especially in seeded tournaments, it's not the worst thing in the world to let the top seeds kind of have an easy first round, and you get some other people that may become good wrestlers, but maybe they're not up to the level yet, but they're getting their toes wet in the tournament, and then the wrestlers that are the best, maybe in the first round, are just off the scale. They may not be at their best, and they're not going at it with the other high seeds, right away. So well, I don't know what the right number is, but that's to be determined. But what the NAI does with the flexibility of wildcards, I'm a massive fan doing that.
We have talked a lot about Iowa's four deep, 110 pounds, whether it's Nyla Valencia, Ava Bayless, Emily Gonzalez, Val Solorio. They picked their two. It's going to be Ava Bayless and Emily Gonzalez. This isn't a slight on anyone else in that bracket. We've talked a lot about Sage Mortimer. I think she's the best 110 pounder in the country right now. We'll see if that plays out. Samara Chavez is tough. Ava Bayless tough. Emily Gonzalez, Kendra Ryan, who Sage Mortimer just teched in the final regionals. She's still in that bracket. So we'll see what happens there at the NCAA College National Championships. But Anaya Falcon has had one of the best seasons, freshman seasons in recent memory, 24-0, has a great hit list right now, beat all four of those Iowa girls, has a win over Samara Chavez, has a win over Paige Morales. She is on fire right now. It was more about what the University of Iowa has and how deep they are.
Yeah, it was more about, we didn't mean to slight Anaya Falcon, who very well could be the best 110 pounder in the country. NAI does not wrestle, against NCAA, but yeah, we didn't mean to like ignore that, but we can only say how many times that right now she's dominant in the NAIA, and we had the issues of how to work that out with a lot of athletes on the same team. But the year she's had is phenomenal. We've talked about it before, but maybe we're not really giving her a due. I'm hoping after, she'll most likely, barring any surprises, win a national title. Love to see her at the U.S. Open and where she stands against some of these other athletes. Maybe that's a good opportunity to see her, but certainly not mentioning her enough. It impressed me very much. And I know we've also said she doesn't have a tremendous amount of freestyle experience. Really wrestled more folk style when she's younger, but whenever she's wrestled freestyle, and obviously now with the college season on her belt, she's dominated and beaten everybody. So, yeah, we respect her. She's had a great season and look forward to seeing a lot more of her.
Please, please, please give us at the conference championships a final between Stefana Jelassic of Lords and Anaya Falcon. Jelassic is the returning 101-pound champ, moved back up to 110 pounds. She's been at a lot of weights over the years. Just some great history here. She had 2 wins in high school over Peyton Presson of Life, and then she talked a little smack on Twitter saying she was going to beat her at conference. Then Presson won by tech, the best she's ever looked. Now we kind of get a resurrected rivalry between these two. It's going to be fun to see, but we need that to happen not only at regionals, conference, but we need to see it at nationals. This is good for wrestling.
Yeah, and I'd say to all of these young ladies who are very good and only going to get better, and now with Sarah Hildebrand out of the mix, let's look forward to seeing a lot of these athletes at the U.S. Open, and sticking their hat in this. Obviously, Mortimer has been competing a lot in seniors and Chavez, but I think a lot of these athletes, and they will qualify for World Team Trials. If they don't go to the Open, they could go to World Team Trials if they win either national tournament. But I'm looking forward to seeing a lot of them, stepping up to the senior level.
Also, please, at the national championships at 117 pounds, please give us Yu Sakamoto, Brianna Gonzalez at some point. Sakamoto looked unbelievable in her regional. This is another topic on how Japan wrestles. And if you watch her, patient, doesn't rush anything, has the solid stance, takes opportunities when they come available. Just the classic Japanese system. We really need this for college wrestling to see this matchup take place.
Yeah, I look forward to that matchup, and I think it'll be great. And yeah, I mean, what they do, and I remember, I mean, if you want to do like literally off the top of my head, just draw analogies. I remember, when I think when Sarah lost in it to Haruna Akuno, and so did Jakaro, and I think Jakara in the World Finals. And if I look back in those matches, I recall they were kind of close. Akuno kind of played her cards, really keeps in a good stand, and as these matches on, they just methodically kind of open the matches up and score. And they might have both won. Both of those matches might have been by Tecmo. I think they were. But they didn't start out that way. Just very patient. The attacks are selective, always in position, classic Japanese style wrestling. And I look forward to seeing that matchup as well. It'll be, it's good to see some of the Japanese wrestlers. We have the Nigerians we talked about. We're starting to get some Japanese wrestlers. The Spanish wrestler. So it's good. It'll be good to see that.
Also in regionals, the fall of King. They placed third at regionals. They are missing a 60-pounder, Cheyenne Bowman, out for the season with an injury. They don't have an 80-pounder. They don't have a 207-pounder. They redshirted some quality wrestlers. Virginia Ford, Claire DeCunho is injured, and Victoria Baez de Lone, who you mentioned. So the once powerful King is no longer placing third at regionals. This was a team coming into the season before Jason Mormon left that I thought they had a 5% chance of going toe-to-toe with the University of Iowa. Now they're getting third at regionals, some things at play, but it's a situation where you have a coach that transcended the sport, built the program, developed it. He's not there anymore. One person, Scott, makes a difference.
I mean, yeah. And this is a classic example of that. You start to get some change, you lose a coach, and then you add on some injuries, not a staggering amount of depth, and it just all compounds. And you've seen that. It's just wrestling programs are built on stability and stability over time. So you could build that up, you could have a program, you could have depth, and then somebody redshirts, somebody gets hurt, and then people want to leave. And you can't tell me it's not a mojo thing, like the vibe, the energy. It's just different. And that's not. I'm not trying to slight Gracie Figueroa. You step in. That's a pretty tall task. All of a sudden, you're starting as an assistant coach, you're the head coach of a major program, and you have some injuries. And it's just a difficult task. And when the foundation of something gets pulled out, the house tends to topple. And this, unfortunately, is an example of that right now. Hopefully they'll, regroup at some point. But you and I talked about this, Kyle, right when it happened. It's very important that the program gets direction. People know it's going to happen. It becomes impossible to recruit. People don't know who the head coach is going to be. and just ultimate, just discord. Like you need that stability, and you needed to address that. And I'm repeating again, you and I talked about that, and it was not addressed. There were no real public announcements, and people didn't know it's going to happen. And to me, this is the logical kind of following of that.
And when you have that situation that we just talked about, it's pretty amazing that you have still have that talent coming through. Samara Chavez is still good. You still have Anya Drury who can still be in the mix. But as you get to the national championship, how will that consistency play out? And I think when you have the end game, and those are high quality wrestlers there, so I think they're going to be just fine. But when you get to the national championship, when does that consistency take over? And right now, we know that they're quality wrestlers, but how does that play out at nationals? We'll see.
Yeah, yeah, I think Kyle, what you say. I mean, I think those wrestlers, they're experienced wrestlers, they'll be fine. So the individuals can kind of push through it, or will themselves through it in their experience. And I'm not saying it doesn't hurt them. There is again a mojo with a good team. It lifts the overall vibe, and now it truly becomes an individual sport. And as you and I have also said, in the women's wrestling, there's a little bit more of a team camaraderie and vibe and cheering, more so than the men by far. And then you lose that, and it just changes things. But again, I think the names you mentioned, Drury, Chavez, I mean, they're so high quality they can push that out. But in general, you're not going to have some of these crazy uplifting performances in a conference tournament, a national tournament, where people just, for the sake of the team that's in a team race, wrestle above their head and feel the momentum. You lose all that. So, it does. It matters.
Olivia Shore of Otterbein will be at the national championship. She's a returning 2022 NCWWC champion. I'm going to be interested to see how she does because the sport has evolved at lightning speed over the last 3 years. She's been in and out. She was at McKendree. Don't really know where she is. She doesn't wrestle a lot, not a high volume wrestler. What does she do at the national championships against quality wrestlers like the two Iowa girls? Sterling Diaz, Rianne Murphy of the University of Iowa. You have Rihanna Sagoon from Grand Valley State. You have some high quality girls in there. How is she going to be able to fit in the mix? We'll see how she does.
Yeah, I'm curious to see how she does. I remember first watching her wrestle, I think at Fargo when she was very young, and she was a competitor, from Ohio. I think her father was a coach, pretty intense, gritty, did well in high school, obviously won a national championship right away in college. So she's a very strong competitor, and she has been inconsistent, not so much in results, more in terms of competing. And I don't know if it's injuries, personal. I don't know the nuances of her. I don't really know her at all, but I'll be curious to see how she does. I mean, obviously, in her absence, the depth has certainly and the level of competition has increased. But I'm not going to count her out. I mean, she's a national champ. She's very experienced, and I look forward to seeing her wrestle.
And the other wrestler from McKendree, Gabby Tedesco, she is an absolute hammer. She's a freshman right now. That would be an interesting matchup there because she's had an outstanding season. She's beaten a lot of these quality girls so far this season. What would it look like for a freshman who has the is the product of the wrestling evolution going against a 22 national champion? I hope that match takes place at some point.
Another match we'd love to see. Hopefully, Kyle, you and I are fantasizing about watching some of these matches, and it's never going to work out as this last episode as we planned. But I think some of these matchups will happen, and it'll be good to see. And I think in the case of Tedesco, I mean, we're just going to be seeing her for years. She's very talented and very tough, and will only keep developing.
Thank you to Lydia Krauss of McKendree and Jade Herzer for giving us an unbelievable match in the regional finals. It came down to a fall by Krauss, but it was not just a dominant fall. It was back and forth. There was action all across the board. There were 4-point throws. Herzer was hitting some great low-level shots in the match. And then at the end, she had Krauss on her back. And then I've never seen how she came out of that and got a headlock and got a fall from underneath. It was wild.
Yeah, it was kind of a weird scenario. I'm waiting for the fall to be called and say just amazing, crazy match. And then next thing you know, she kind of gets up on her knees somehow. There's some squirming and gets headlocked. And yeah, that was nonstop action actually, for that match for upperweights. It was great to see. I thought something different was going to happen about 5 different times during the match, but It was about as exciting as it gets. Kudos to both wrestlers for competing at a very quick pace for upperweights.
We are entering the National Collegiate Women's Wrestling Championships. It will be the last one. We are entering a new era, so we will be watching how this plays out. The University of Iowa will win this championship. I think it's hilarious when people ask, do you think Iowa's going to win it? And I just kind of compare it to where we are as a sport. We're fanatics. We're talking about this multiple times a day. So not everyone's in the weeds. And I look at it like how I watch University of Northern Iowa women's volleyball. I like the program, know a couple players on the team, don't know the rules intimately, but I enjoy watching it. I follow the results. I like it when they win. I think that's a lot of people with whatever team they're watching, and we want them to become fanatics like we are, but that's not going to be the case. So when I get questions occasionally, you think Iowa's going to get it done this year? Absolutely, 100%. I would mortgage everything I have to bet on the University of Iowa. It would be bigger than Miracle on Ice to beat this Iowa team. And here's why. You have three returning world and Olympic medalists on your team right now. We've talked about this so much. Macy Kilty, Kennedy Blades, and Kylie Welker. It's never happened in the history of college wrestling, men's or women's, that you've had three on the same team. You can retroactively go back and say, yeah, they won Olympic gold medals, but that was after they were in college. It's never happened, men's or women's, as far as I can tell. So when you have that kind of advantage, you have essentially a 75-point lead going in because minimum, if you win a championship, you get 20 points plus bonus points. Let's just give them five conservatively. I think it's going to be more than that. So you're looking at 75 points right there. That's not even including your returning national champions and national finalists who you may not think about in top of mind awareness when you have Emily Gonzalez, Ava Bayless, JC Feller, you have Brianna Gonzalez at 117, along with a slew of other people. Iowa is going to dominate, and I don't think it's going to be even close.
Yeah, the math gets very difficult, when you're scoring points like that, murderers row back to back to back. And again, I mean, they're really stacked in, pretty much every way. Yeah, we didn't mention Estrella and, Callie Lang, who I talked about a while ago, has had a great season and just keeps getting better, won the conference tournament. I mean, they're stacked top to bottom. And, it really isn't, I don't want to say fair. It is what it is, but it's just, the team it's a superstar all-star team, with staggering depth. And it's up to other universities to, power four schools, come on, give them some competition. They have the scholarships, the NIL, Carver Hawkeye. It's just the deck is not even right now, so it's not going to be a competition. I'm hoping that programs aren't judging their season on whether where we are versus Iowa. It should be about, are we developing our athletes? Are we getting better? Do we have a sound lineup top to bottom? Are we fulfilling the commitment we made to the athletes when they came and signed on with us, that we're going to give them, the attention they need, the improvement, the, one-on-ones, are they going to get better? Because, right now it's just disproportionate. And that's not Clarissa's fault or Iowa's fault. I mean, this is just what it is. They didn't start the program. They were behind everybody. They didn't have a program for a long time. And then when they did, it came with a lot of fanfare and as a place people want to go. But all they can do is the same thing, fulfill the commitments they make to the athletes, get them better, make them ready to compete and, win world Olympic titles, not just medals, and keep improving the athletes. So, it's not a fair landscape at the moment, but it's really nobody's fault, other than the other universities, the other universities, the Power Four schools with money. Do what you said you were going to do and start women's programs.
Because Clarissa's role is to go out and dominate. It's not her role to say, I want this to be equal, so let's just hand over some of our recruits, our commitments, so that we can just make the playing field a little more even. That's not her job. Her job is to dominate and crush the competition. Is it even? Not right now. It's no. You're going against predominantly Division Two and Division Three. Division Three doesn't have athletic scholarships, but again, like you said, it's not her fault. She's got to recruit as many quality wrestlers to the program as possible. They have the name, they have the resources, they have, I mean, Iowa Wrestling's the biggest name probably in wrestling worldwide. Penn State, Oklahoma State are in that mix as well. So I'd love to see one of those two programs get a women's college program at this point. But right now we don't have that, so that's the landscape.
Absolutely. And I saw, watching the men's meet last night at Carver Hawkeye against Oklahoma State, where Iowa won and had great performances. I mean, that's like holy ground, Carver Hawkeye, and University of Iowa wrestling. It really is, and you see the excitement around the men, and the women are starting to feel it too. They have great crowds. Who wouldn't want to wrestle in that environment? With that kind of fan base that recognizes it, and it's a great thing. That the city, Iowa City, and Iowa, they're special places if you like wrestling. I guess unless you're from Oklahoma State or Penn State, but in general, if you like the sport of wrestling, it's like holy ground, and it is to me. And there will be competition. The sport's evolving. It's just going to be, you cannot create, an NCAA division with wrestling, or go from WCW to NAIA and then NCAA, and it all just work out perfectly with even balance. It's going to be fits and starts, and it's going to be uneven at times. It's just what it is, and it will take time to develop. This is still happening, slower than some would have liked, but I still think it's marching on rather quickly in the sports, one of the fastest growing sports in the world. So
Progress is messy. It doesn't go in a straight line. We've seen that here with women's wrestling. I compare it to flag football right now for women. That's the next big sport. If women's flag football progressed like women's wrestling did, it would be like all the D2, D3, NAI programs starting women's flag football. And then all of a sudden, Alabama adds a program. Everyone's going to hop on board. Everyone's going to know what Alabama football is. And then they're going to get all the attention. And I think that hurts a lot of the other programs that hey, we've been here carrying the sport all this time. Iowa comes in, now they get all the attention. But what about us? We've been doing this for a long time. And the irony is that Tanya Verbeek and Clarissa Chun were part of that early movement where they weren't getting any attention. She went to Missouri Valley, and Clarissa's even said when she was in Hawaii that the only program that she had heard of was the University of Iowa. So that shows the power of how it can reach beyond just the borders and how big of a program Iowa wrestling is.
yeah, and I don't blame these other programs for saying we were the pioneers, we did this, and unfortunately it's just the way it is, and all you can do is the best you can with what you have and compete the best you can, and ideally too. If we're really, we'll go back to this because we said it. Like, the thing about wrestling that's great, other than us being fanatics and loving wrestling to watch it, it's how it builds people's character, makes them better people to handle adversity in life and be good at whatever they do. So you cannot just judge if you have a coach in a program. Well, they didn't beat Iowa, or they only took fifth. Well, let's judge the character of the young ladies that are coming out of the school and how the coach and the other athletes impact them and the legacy of the character of the school. So it is not, I know we all want to win and everybody wants to win everything, but every athlete that goes, they might go to school for the experience of it, want to be part of a team. They're not good enough to wrestle at a Power Four school. That doesn't mean that those people may not be infinitely more successful. Who knows? Let's take a lineup of, the 10 people from life or 10 Iowa athletes and look who's better in life. I don't know, no pun intended, but I don't know how it's really going to work out, right? So, it's bigger than just who's winning the matches. And I think anybody can tell you that, so let's just understand the big picture.
As we look at what will happen at the 2025 National Collegiate Women's Wrestling Championships, I think it's important to understand how this is going to play out because even if you look at the Grandview Open, Iowa didn't have some of their best performances. Nanea Estrella didn't look great. She got fifth place. Reese Laramendi didn't look fantastic, even though she won. But when you get to the national championships, you have a hometown crowd in Coralville at the Extreme Arena. There's science behind this, that there's an endocrine response that when you know you're going to go out and win and you have the support behind you, you actually have glands that release hormones into your bloodstream. Your cortisol levels get suppressed, your testosterone increases, and I think you're going to see that in these matches, unless you're going against a Sage Mortimer or a Claire Bowie who have been through that. And so, the more experience you have going into a match like that, if you've experienced world class or international wrestling, you've experienced some of those stressors, but not many people have experienced wrestling in front of Carver Hawk Arena or the big crowd. So that's why you see historically when great Iowa teams, great Penn State teams, great Oklahoma State teams come out there, when it comes national tournament time, they have an extra oomph when they go out there. And so, regardless of what past results are, when you get into that quarterfinal, semifinal match against an Iowa wrestler, they probably have a 2-0 advantage starting out the match.
Yeah, the crowd definitely helps. And the funny thing is, there's some athletes that are such competitors that they want nothing more than to stick their finger up at the home crowd as they beat their favorite wrestler. So yeah, there are some people that get the adrenaline, that thrive in adversity and want to be the villain. But yeah, it's absolutely an advantage. But I would still argue I'd rather wrestle in front of a packed arena, even if they're not my people, than a pseudo empty one where only the athletes are just sitting around, eating oranges between matches. The energy in general is good for the sport, and I think it'll be fun environment.
That goes without question. But the ones that are going to potentially beat Iowa, they're going to have gone through some stuff or have some level of belief going into it that they can win. And Sage Mortimer is the classic example. I think she wants it. I think she embraces it. I think she wants people at that arena to hate her because I think she wants to prove people wrong. And so whatever she does, I think she has belief and she's been through it. How many times we talked about her U23 World
Yeah.
final match where she's down. She believes she can win. She has it.
Yeah, and listen, yeah, and I think a lot of the teams have one or two athletes at least. The better teams have more of that. With the development of the sport in this country now, it used to just be cadets and juniors. Then they developed U23s, got more developed. They went from university nationals. Now there's U15s, U13s. But so the more and more of the girls are competing at younger and younger ages and making world teams or taking third, in body bar, women's national. So I think there's more and more out there of athletes that are experiencing going there. I don't think that means any of them are going to be Kennedy Blades just on, some experience at a national level. But I think we're getting more and more experience, and that's how you get better as a country. Right? We always talk about Japan. They start wrestling young. It's an important sport in the country. The more athletes we have with more programs at college and high school, and the athletes are competing younger and younger, where there's a room full of young girls. They're competing, some against boys, but a lot, with girls are competing in these national tournaments, which the ages are getting younger and younger. The brackets are getting deeper and deeper, and the talent getting better and better. And the more of that, the more people can compete, in these national tournaments at a high level, regardless of the home crowd.
But what have we always talked about? The way you get confidence is through skill building. It's not just through thinking that you're really good. You have to get skills that you execute on the mat. That's fundamental to any winning that you're going to do on the wrestling mat.
Absolutely. But, as we've said before, how do you get the skills? You go out, you compete at a high level, and you don't just beat the piss out of people. You compete against people that can challenge you and, ideally beat you. You look at the film, you talk to your coaches, say, what did I do well? What didn't I do well? What do I need to work on? Let's come up with a plan, drill, keep working on the weaknesses, strengthening the strengths, compete, see where you are, rinse, repeat, get better.
Here's someone I think did it right. To your point that you've talked about numerous times is bringing more women's wrestlers into the fold to be coaches. Jeff McGinnis at Simpson, he was adamant that he wanted to keep one of his best assets, and that's Emma Cochran. She was an assistant coach. He fought to get her into associate head coaching status. He knew what he had. He knew that she was going to be an outstanding coach, got her to that role. I think this is a great formula that Jeff McGinnis has implemented. Jeff, a two-time NCAA champion for the University of Iowa, now at Simpson. I just think this is a great thing that he's done. He gets the big picture, knows what he has, bring him into the fold. Make sure you don't let one of your best assets leave the program.
Yeah, kudos to him. And, the really good coaches, number one, are going to want a really good assistant coach, but you get the joke, the good men's coaches too. They understand, that this is a women's sport and, they want to grow the sport. So, yeah, kudos to Jeff. Thank you. Great competitor. I've watched him wrestle a lot in my life, just absolute hammer. And it's great to see that he's doing it. It's great to see he's doing the state of Iowa, with a smaller, college.
Also, just want to give North Central credit for what they did in 2023 when they won and then got second to Iowa. What Joe Norton has done with a non-athletic scholarship program is staggering. And historically, it's the only time a Division III program in college wrestling has won the ultimate championship. So no D3 program when it was all mixed together had ever won a title with Division II and Division I schools. It's the only time that a non-scholarship program at a four-year institution has won the final championship. That should be celebrated what he's been able to do at that program.
I mean, it's always perplexed me because I, don't really know Joe well. I've talked to him, maybe said hi a couple of times. You know him very well. And I remember way before we started the show, when we talk, I'd say to you, first of all, I'd say, what is North Central? I never had heard of it, no disrespect. And then I'm like, how on earth did this guy get this lineup? Well, how did he get everybody? And obviously, it's because he must be a great person, great coach, and he got people to believe, and a great recruiter, and got people to believe, and has a dynamic personality that can do that. So yeah, it's amazing he did that, and he's the only one that's done it. And I still don't know how. I mean, it's shocking.
Let's end with some girls high school wrestling that had prep nationals. We've had the pound for pound high school rankings have been released. When you look at prep nationals, some interesting results. Just watching it, there's just some who's who. Jacqueline Mazakis actually got taken down twice against Kayla Beatrice. She won 15 to 8. Of course, this is folk style, but you saw, I don't want to say being disinterested, but you do see the difference in freestyle folk style. But once Jacqueline Mazakis puts her mind to it and she got on top and decided she wanted to get the inside wrist and ride, she can do it. But I think it's good that she's given folk style a shot, even though that's what she has to do to win a national prep championship. They focus primarily on freestyle at Wyoming Seminary. Taina Fernandez dominated as expected. Emma Bacon won a fun match. Kelly Gilchrist looked good in her match. Marie Sharp got a fall over Maddie Ripley, which was an outstanding match. But it's interesting, Scott, these high level girls, when they win a national prep championship, it should be maybe a little bit more exciting than what it is. I think they wrestle all these high level competitions, then they get to national preps. It's probably not as big of a deal because they're wrestling college opens and women's nationals, but still cool that we have this tournament.
Yeah, I mean it's good. I massively prefer freestyle to folk style personally. But yeah, I mean it's good they do. I didn't even know Jocelyn Buzakis got taken down twice. That's pretty shocking to me actually. But that just shows you. I mean, the one thing I looked at the most recent. I always look at when the national rankings come out, and the one thing that I'm noticing, when I look at them, I've looked at these since they started doing them, right? You look at them, and there'd always be like three or four weights where the number ones were really big names and really good. And my two perceptions are number one, when you look top to bottom, it's like every weight's number one now is like really, really good. Like names I know, names I've watched, the number ones and the number twos. And the other shocking thing to me now is you'll see somebody all of a sudden it's like a number six, and that person's really good and what may have been a number one or a two. You're like, how good are the rest of the people in this way that this person's dropped down? I can't believe that so and so is only ranked ninth now. I mean, that's so you're getting depth and breadth across the board without getting into names, but there are good people at every weight class now. And, there were always good people, but it's just getting deeper and deeper.
And we know how good they are because they're
They're
wrestling
winning
in
college
and
opens.
they're winning college opens. But really, are you ever going to get better when your top three pound for pound were meet Elor, Kennedy Blades, and Kylie Welker? I don't know if that's ever going to get beat. I hope it does for our sake, but that was pretty incredible.
Yeah, that's going to be tough, but I don't know. We might, I'm sure when the top three are pretty good when Helen was in high school. That I don't know if they had the rankings or what they were, but they were pretty. Helen, Vicky. I mean, they were all winning. I mean, Vicky I think three-time junior world champ or two. I mean, people. I mean, yeah, those are top three, but there's always going to be. Yeah, it's only getting better and better. Yeah, we'll have better than that. I know it's a shocking statement, but we will.